Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone. And now, here's your host and CEO of Rue Global Impact, Deborah Rue.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. Today, I'm featuring Tara Moss, who I got to learn about Tara Moss's work because we interviewed her on the Access chat. So Neil Milliken, who's also a huge fan of Tara Moss, had told me about her work, and she's amazing. She's amazing in so many ways. Sorry, Tara, I'm going to embarrass you. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit. She's an author. She's a best-selling author. She is an advocate. She is a leader. She is a model. There's so much that to Tara Moss, and the world is starting to really find her work, especially the community of people with disabilities. And I was just telling her off air a little bit about Billion Strong, and she's a perfect person that we want to highlight on Billion Strong because she's an artist, she's a leader, she's a woman entrepreneur. She brings so much to the table that breaks down those barriers that say that disability equals broken or disability equals not able to contribute to society. It's ridiculous, and she has a powerful story. So, Tara, I gave
Thank
just
you for
a
that
little
beautiful
bit.
introduction. That was gorgeous,
Well,
Deborah.
I'm
Thank
such
you.
a
It's an
fan of your
honor.
work. I'm such a fan. I'm such a fan. But tell the audience more about who you are and your journey. And I know we're going to explore your new book that just came out. But yeah, so tell the audience a little bit about who you are.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Again, I'm Tara Moss. I'm an author. I've written and published 13 books so far. Those are in fiction and nonfiction. So I write memoir, historical fiction, paranormal fiction, and crime fiction. And I'm also very, very present and very active in advocacy. I'm a human rights advocate. I'm an advocate for people with disabilities and for women and girls as well. And I guess you could say I've spent the last 2 decades of my life trying to center women and girls in storytelling. And this has probably peaked really with The War Widow, which is my latest best-selling book. And that's a book set in 1946 and subverts the noir or hard-boiled genre and makes it so that you have female characters rather than being the victims or the femme fatale for that matter, who's a kind of side character, and puts them front and center. And also puts people with disabilities front and center, which is appropriate always in our storytelling, but particularly appropriate certainly for a story set immediately after World War II, when we have this huge rise in disabilities with returned soldiers and the experiences of World War II. So through my fiction and my nonfiction storytelling and communications, I try to touch on human rights issues and I guess bring in my own personal experiences as a person with disabilities and as a woman, but also the experiences of our communities, which are so much more broad, more diverse than what we tend to see in mainstream storytelling, and so much more diverse than what we tend to see in media that is mainstream. So that's my reason for being out here, I suppose, is to try to shine the light on those who maybe aren't as frequently included in that cultural conversation and representation.
Yeah, well said. And also the way you include the characters are very empowering, as opposed to sometimes we see characters being included with disabilities, and we like to use the term inspirational porn in our community. And it's just, oh, I'm going to just throw in this character with disabilities because you can be like, oh, look at her. So I like that you have a talent of really having very bold, strong characters, and it really, and that's really what it's about. And once again, let's really celebrate our lived experiences. So how do you do that? Because I see other authors not doing that successfully, but you have really mastered that.
Oh, thank you. That's a great compliment. I guess the important thing is to try to represent what's real and what's out there rather than what just serves a central typical mainstream protagonist. What we've seen in the past, I think, and this is why that concept of nothing about us without us is so incredibly important. We've seen often able-bodied male white authors writing about groups that are not within their own demographic. And of course, they should do that, of course, but they're not always getting that. And often what we will see is that these other characters become sidekicks whose primary role in the story is to prop up the central protagonist. They're not the heroes of their own storylines. They're not represented as being whole human beings. And I think that's a mistake, and it doesn't make for very good storytelling, and it's not very accurate. It doesn't have that authenticity, that ring of authenticity that I want to try to achieve in my writing. So when you're reading The War Widow, each of the characters, I hope, and this has been my aim and the feedback I've got, each of the characters are in a way the heroes of their own storylines. You don't have this sense of them only existing to prop up another character. There's something really going on for them. So I think it is incredibly important to represent different communities, not to cut them out, but also to be sensitive to correct representations and recognize that is actually going to improve your writing. It's going to make for a better story and also a less stereotypical representation, a less sort of one-dimensional and inaccurate representation that we all recognize because we've seen it so many times in popular culture. We're all sick of seeing it. And it gets a bit boring, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I know.
It does.
I have a daughter that just turned 34, and she's big on birthdays, and so we have birthday months. And she was born with Down syndrome, and often when you see characters with Down syndrome portrayed, they're so happy and they're so light and easygoing. My daughter gets really tired of people treating her that way, that she's supposed to be happy and make them feel good about themselves all day long, because sometimes she's not in a good mood, especially unfortunately, you are living with chronic pain as well, but my daughter has been living with chronic pain for years. We didn't realize it at first. We didn't understand why she seemed to have personality changes. And what I didn't realize was that she was dealing with chronic pain. And of course, I realized something was wrong, but none of us understood. And the doctors, we all figured it out when things got really bad. But the reason why she has chronic pain was very unusual. She has a rare blood clot disorder that attacked her liver, blah, blah, blah. But there's so much that people don't understand about the lived experiences, the true lived experiences. And that's why, once again, not only do I want to support your work, but I think I encourage the entire community of people with disabilities to support your work, because we're a billion strong. So if you had nobody else but just our community supporting your work, you're already a bestseller. But so do you mind telling us a little bit more about your experience with chronic pain? And also, I know you're a former model, very successful model. And I know you talked about that a little bit in the interview that we did with Access Chat. And some of the comments you made, they made me sad that society still doesn't get what an amazing woman that you are all the way across the board. So I was just wondering if you would explore that here too.
Thank you, Deborah. I was born and raised in Canada. That's where I'm speaking from today. Actually, I'm back in my hometown. And when I was a little girl, I was very tall already. And strangers used to come up and say, hey, you should be a model. We don't come up to young girls and say, hey, you should be an author or a rocket scientist. We'll say, hey, you should be a model. And so I guess I kind of took that on in terms of my identity when I was little, considering maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my destiny or the path I'm supposed to go on, everyone seems to think. Unfortunately, my mother became very ill and passed away when I was a young person. She had multiple myeloma, which was considered rare for a younger woman. And unfortunately, she was one of the first 100 people in the world to get a bone marrow transplant for multiple myeloma, and she did not survive the procedure. And losing her was a turning point in my life and a formative experience for me. And I feel like it lit a fire under me that suddenly I needed to make something of myself, to make a name for myself, and perhaps even be worthy of the sacrifice my mother made to try to stick around to be there for me, to guide me through life, because she said she wanted to be there for her daughters. And she went through what was at that time in 1990 quite a painful procedure. Bone marrow transplants are still very challenging, but they have improved considerably in the 30 odd years that have since passed. But it was something that she was unlikely to survive, and she didn't make it through. Anyway, I had this fire lit under me, and I felt like I needed to make something of myself. So, of course, I reached for the thing that I'd been told I should do, and I flew off to Europe to become a model. I was very fortunate because modeling gave me the opportunity to see different cultures, see different parts of the world. There were negatives that came with that as well. I started modeling when I was 14. So by the age of 16, which is so young, I was already living by myself in London and Paris and Milan, and was very tall and was treated very much like a much more mature person than I was, especially coming off the island in Victoria on Vancouver Island in Canada and being thrust right into New York and Milan and these cosmopolitan cities. So I had some varied experiences, some quite negative and some positive, but it was my dream always to be an author. And that was not something that was encouraged. And when I finally said, okay, modeling, I'm very grateful for, I got to experience these different cultures. A lot of people my age have not had the chance to see, to hear these different languages, to see these different beautiful parts of the world. But I really want to be an author, and I'm going to focus on that now. What happened is I wrote a book called Fetish, which is a crime thriller. I wrote that when I was 23, and when I was 25, it was published and became a bestseller, which was a great thrill for me and a childhood dream come true, because I had always wanted to be a writer. And the thing I didn't expect was to be the center of a kind of a rumor campaign saying that I couldn't have possibly written my own work because I was a model. This idea of a model turned author, that I couldn't possibly string words together because models don't do that. We're just this one-dimensional photograph that you see. So this got to the stage where I was actually dared to take a polygraph test or a lie detector test to prove that I write my own work. And this ended up on the front page of the Weekend Australian, which is a national newspaper in Australia where I was first published. And it was a wild experience. I can't imagine many authors, whatever walk of life they come from when they first are published, I can't imagine many of them are dared to take a polygraph test to prove they've actually written their own books. Of course, I passed. I should mention, I passed because I write my own work. And I have a 30-page report telling us the obvious. Guilty as charged. I'm an author. This is what I do. Now, that feels like many years ago, and it is in some ways. That test was in 2002. But that model turned author tag has hung around quite a bit in some countries. And I noticed that when I'm first published in a new territory, again, often that conversation will come up. They'll say, here are these old model photos of Tara. How could she write this book? And it's because those are photographs. Anyone can be photographed. And we're all looking for ways to pay our rent. It's hardly shocking to wear a dress and have someone snap a photo. So it's odd to come up against those stereotypes. And I guess now, because I have become injured, I had a hip injury in 2016, gosh, oh my goodness, 5 years ago. Where does the time go? It feels like longer and yet a shorter period of time as well. I was injured in 2016, and that has led to complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS, which is a very painful condition. It's a combination, they believe, of peripheral central nervous system dysfunction, if you will, causing constant pain signals in the affected limb. It's most commonly in a limb and often from nerve injuries or other trauma to that limb. In my case, my right leg. And due to that injury now, I'm often an ambulatory wheelchair user. In fact, I'm in my fabulous wheelchair, Hira. I name everything on my mobility aids. So Hira is my wheelchair. I'm sitting in Hira at the moment, and looking at those stereotypes, it's now different stereotypes I'm I'm finding myself grapple with. And I don't look like the idea of someone who would be using a cane or a rollator or a wheelchair. I don't look like the right person pulling into that disability parking spot. Even though I've got the card hanging there off the rear view mirror, I'll get people shouting at me, disability parking. I'm like, I know, that's why I'm pulling in here.
The disability police parking.
The disability police parking. So, yeah, I've had a varied career and varied experiences and come up against a really interesting suite, if you will, of stereotypes and switching from some to one to the other in a way. Now I don't look right for being disabled or in chronic pain or to have an invisible disability. So yeah, there's no winning. Stereotypes are always a bit off, aren't they?
So you're too pretty to be an author. What?
Yeah, what is that? I don't really understand the association.
Author. It's so weird because I've actually had some very attractive girlfriends, and they were treated so differently from my other girlfriends. Like me, I feel I'm average, but I just they would find there's just a lot to this that I personally experienced through friendships that I didn't understand. It's just amazing how we discriminate against each other. It's just amazing.
I think we love to put things in little boxes, neat boxes, and no one fits those boxes. There's no one size fits all for any of these elements of our experience or identity. So we're always a bit wrong in the way if we try to use that lens, we're always going to be off.
I know, it's just wild. I also want to admit that she has a role with UNICEF and pain in Australia, which I thought was very cool too. So you really are taking this advocacy very seriously, and I know your mother must be so proud of you. She must be so proud of you. So
I miss her every day.
Yes.
Janie Moss is her name, and I miss her every day. She's a great inspiration for me because she was so brave dealing with her condition and so brave dealing with that pain. And that is, for me, that's something that stays with me.
Yes, and she did not want to leave her daughters.
Yeah.
She did not want to leave. And so that's also... It's tough. I'm skipping around a little bit with some of the questions that you said I could ask you, but I want to go to visibility for disability. It's a passion for yours, and you set up Tara and Wolfie, your Instagram account, to sort of help normalize mobility aid use. And once again, we were talking about identity with the Billion Strong, but it is so important to break down all these identity pieces. So why is it so important for you to really make sure that you're showing visibility with disabilities in different ways?
Yeah, this is a great question. I actually found about 2 years after my injury that I hid my cane behind someone when they were getting cameras out after doing a panel. As a public speaker, I do a lot of public speaking, and I did this panel and I'd used a cane to get up on the stage and all that sort of thing. No problem. But when people want to take photographs, I put the cane behind others, and I realized I was trying to hide it and not have it be a focus. And I thought, I'm not going to do this again. I'm trying to hide, or I'm feeling some sense of a lack of ease about my mobility aid. I'm not going to let this happen again. So I started becoming very visible with my mobility aids, which helped me in enormous ways. It reduces my pain to use mobility aids. They are freedom machines, literally. My wheelchair is a freedom machine. I would be lying in bed if it wasn't for the fact that I have this beautiful wheelchair that is suited to me, that allows me to get out into the world and participate and enjoy myself and get sunshine on my face. And I thought, this was a few years ago now, but I thought, why am I putting this behind other people? And I realized that part of ableism, that is stigma around being seen with a mobility aid, was something that had also crept into my thinking. And it's very common. We see in studies that there's a large number of people who would benefit from mobility aid use who do not use mobility aids due to internalized ableism or shame or concern about how others will see them, or concern about being judged that they're not disabled enough or they don't look the part. There's the disability police will say, why are you using that cane? There are so many complex reasons why there's negative associations with these devices, which are enormously helpful. And you're wearing spectacles right now, you're wearing glasses, and this has become really common. But there was a time when wearing glasses was also seen as a sign of weakness, something you'd want to take off in photographs and not be seen with. You wouldn't have someone come up to you and say, why are you wearing those? What's your problem? Why are you wearing glasses? But people will sometimes, in some communities, still come up to a person, especially if they don't have gray hair or they're not looking like the person's idea of the myth of what a person with disability looks like, and say, what's wrong with you, love? What'd you do to yourself? And I've had that question so many times. So I felt passionately that I wanted to start Tara and Wolfie, which is an Instagram page, and that has grown, and my mobility aid visibility is quite a bit broader now. But at Tara and Wolfie, the Instagram page, it's just looking really at that, the visibility of disability, the ways we can show how beautiful and freeing these aids are and how they can help people. And I'm just thrilled with the response. I get messages every day from people who have told me that for themselves or someone that they love, they've seen images and they just feel better about getting out with their cane. They feel proud. They'll send me photographs of them dressed up and they've got their cane or their wheelchair or their walker and they've dressed it up. They've got color. They've got a sense of their own personality on their mobility aids, and they feel proud. It's an extension of themselves, this thing that helps them, that reduces their pain, that increases their freedom. And that positive association really needs to come through at all levels of society, and it's going to be one step at a time. However we're taking those steps, it could be one wheelchair push at a time. But I keep thinking, even in the language, it's always steps.
I know.
We're taking steps, or stand up for your rights. Sometimes I can't actually stand, but I'm still metaphorically standing up for my rights. So yes, there's a long way we have to go, but I think being visible and being successful and being disabled and showing that these things coexist and that there are all types of different people out there with disabilities. We're a huge community, people with different personalities, jobs, appearances, experiences. I think that visibility is enormously important.
I agree. And I love all the people that bling out their wheelchairs and their walkers and their canes. And I want one of those blingy canes. I don't, canes. But also, when you were saying that about the glasses, I remember how many times do we see in the movies where supposedly the girl is not attractive because she's got her hair back and she's got glasses on, then she whips off her glasses and puts down her hair and a little bit of lipstick. We send all these really bad messages to girls. We send really bad messages. And I think that's why the work that you're doing is so important. But I want to be mindful of the time and everything. And what I would really like to do is I would really like to talk about the book, your latest book. It's already a bestseller. Yay. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'm going to get it today. And so the name of the book, once again, is The War Widow. And it's set in 1946. And the characters include Billy Walker, a female private investigator, and her assistant, a disabled war veteran, Sam Baker. So I want to entice the audience to go and buy this book, and also to remind the audience it is so important to do reviews. Please do reviews. It makes a huge difference on who can see it. And anytime if you like the book, do the reviews from wherever you bought it from, if you bought it on Amazon, but also go out on social media and tag Tara Moss. She's very easy to find so that she knows you appreciate her work. But I think, once again, I say to the community, let's support Tara Moss. Let's support all of the Tara Mosses in the world, because this is how we change things for ourselves. But so can we go into the book a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Get the audience excited about it?
Yeah, look, I'm obsessed with the 1940s and the stories of people from that era. And I wanted to write this book set in that time because of all of the extraordinary women and extraordinary citizens, ordinary citizens that we don't hear about enough in our stories of that time, who were doing amazing things, like women like Virginia Hall, who was an incredible spy, who was a disabled woman. She had a wooden leg named Cuthbert, and she's one of the most successful spies from the time. Most people don't know her name. So this is fiction. The names in this book are fictionalized, but it really speaks to the extraordinary real life people from the time. So Billy Walker's, she's a private investigator. She's not your Philip Marlowe. She's the female version of that person you'd love to come into the room with and say, I have some problems I hope you can help me with. And Billy Walker guides us through this very, at times, dangerous world in 1946. And you feel, I hope, in good hands. She's been described as, I think quite aptly, as a fast-talking, fast-driving, champagne-swilling, Nazi hunter private investigator. Is that not the coolest girl gang you'd want to join, Deborah?
I want to meet her.
She is amazing. She drives a fast car. She has a wonderful assistant, Sam. He's returned from the war with disabilities, and the army has no use for him. He's not, given a decent job after the end of the war, which was such a typical experience, unfortunately. And they make an amazing pair and go out and go on these cases together. And the case in 1946 that The War Widow focuses on is a case that should have been a common domestic experience for someone who's lost a son. They're trying to find him, and it ends up becoming a lot more dangerous and a lot more complex than they originally thought. So it's a pretty exciting, fast-paced story with some beautiful characters that I think the readers will really enjoy. And I know the feedback has been that Billy Walker is just a heroine you want to spend time with, and I couldn't agree more.
Oh, that's so exciting. I love strong characters. Have any of your books been made into movies? Because it sure seems like these are the kind of movies I like to see. I really like movies where I don't like all the movies where it's just gore and slash. I like movies where the characters are very rich and robust and multidimensional. So I just think your work needs to be in film.
I hope so too, and there is interest. So I hope that will take off. That's what's in the air at the moment. My work is being discovered in North America at the moment. I've had books out in, I think, 19 different languages so far, and I'm really hoping this is the moment for discovery in North America, and we can see Billy Walker on the big screen. She would just eat up that screen. And same with Sam. And also, there's a wonderful Indigenous woman in The War Widow called Shyla. She's a Wiradjuri woman. And again, a heroine of her own plotline in that book. She's extraordinary. So I want to see these characters up on the big screen. And I think that, I'm just getting chills thinking about it. She would be fabulous.
Do you have an actress in mind for playing her?
Well, I actually imagine Billy Walker in the book. She's a bit like Ava Gardner in The Killers, the 1946 film. So she has that kind of 1940s look. But there are a few actors who could fill that role. They would just need to have the appropriate level of kind of, I don't know, chutzpah, if you will, that strength, sense of self, and that wonderful combination of traditionally masculine and feminine traits that we see in 1940s heroines. They got those strong shoulder pads, they're out there getting their hands dirty, and they got their fighting red lipstick on at the same time.
Right.
It's such a 1940s thing that I just adore.
I do too. I'm going to ask you a question that I know is totally unfair. So you have 13 books. So what are your, I won't make you pick your top favorite. Give us a couple of your favorites.
The War Widow is probably my favorite. My second favorite might be the one I'm working on, which is the sequel, but I'll also love Fictional Woman, which we see behind me here. That's my face. Yeah, my face is covered in stereotypes on the cover of The Fictional Woman. So it says bossy. We call women bossy instead of the boss. I think there's bimbo, there's airhead, these different stereotypes written on my face. And that was done physically. So the cover is not airbrushed, and it has been written on by an artist. And that is a book, The Fictional Woman, about fictions we tell about women and girls. And that is a book I'm very proud of as well. I also love the Mac Vanderwall series, which is my contemporary crime series. There are 6 books in that series, and Mac, she's got a special place in my heart. She's some have compared her to a female Jason Bourne. She's a woman of action. And I guess you see that across all of my books. There's always a central female protagonist who is very much pushing the plot along, who's very central to what's happening, who's a woman of action and one you want it in your girl gang.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love when there are multiple stories and multiple books. Another reason to get this on the screen too, because then you can,
Yes.
I know they like doing sequels. So that's
Yes.
very exciting
And
too.
we get to know that character intimately. That's the wonderful thing about writing a series, is getting to know the character more and more. But also, I'm an avid reader and a watcher of film and television, and I love getting to know the characters so well. You feel like they're part of your life.
The characters, when the characters are you brought to life for me, I just love it too. There's nothing better than strong characters in a book and a movie for me. So I am obviously a fan of Tara Moss, and I please go out and support her work. Once again, we're trying to change the dynamics for our community. We do that by supporting each other. That's why I do this show. And Tara, I know that you're on social media. I know that you have a website. Tell the audience how they can find you.
You can find me online. I've got my website at taramoss.com. Also on Twitter, it's Tara_Moss. The poor woman who's Tara Moss, she's long since fled from her account. She's getting all of my tweets. But on Facebook and Instagram, you can find me at Tara and Wolfie, if you want to focus on these wonderful mobility aids and issues of disability and chronic illness and chronic pain, or my broader account, which is Tara Moss Author. And I hope I find you. Please look me up, say hello. I'm very active online. Give me a hi, and I'll definitely follow back and would love to meet you.
And I will also say, I know a lot of people representing corporations watch the show. Tara is a wonderful speaker. So she's really busy. So you got to make sure that you get her in enough time. But she's a wonderful speaker. She just was on a youth panel that we did with Open Business Council, and she just did a fabulous job. So she's a wonderful speaker, big advocate. There's so many wonderful things about Tara. So let's support her work. Let's really listen and learn from the work too, because her work, it's more than just supporting her. She's actually changing the way we think about strong women and what it means to be a strong woman and a strong character. Tara, thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. It was such an honor to chat with you, and I could just chat for days with you. You're so wonderful and supportive. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing and for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
We're stronger together. So it's The War Widow. Go get a copy, and please tell your friends, do reviews. This is very important to support authors this way. And go out on social media and brag about Tara too. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you online, I hope.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You've been listening to Human Potential at Work, brought to you by Rue Global Impact. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your audio. To learn more about Rue Global Impact and the services we provide, visit rueglobal.com. To learn more about how you can become a sponsor of Human Potential at Work, email David at rueglobal.com. That's David at rueglobal.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next time with a new episode.